Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really fascinating puzzle from an ancient legal text. We're going to see how two brilliant minds go head-to-head with a seriously confusing contradiction, and in the process, they actually build a timeless framework for how to think logically. It's pretty cool.
So, let's just dive right in. Imagine you're trying to follow a set of rules. Could be for a game, a legal code, even a recipe, and you hit a wall. You find two instructions that seem to say the exact opposite thing. What do you do? How do you even move forward? This isn't some new problem, you know? It's a challenge that scholars have been wrestling with for thousands of years.
Our story today comes straight from the Talmud, which is the central text of Rabbinic Judaism. We're looking at a section that's all about these super intricate rules of ritual purity. And right in the middle of it is a scenario that seems simple on the surface, but it's hiding this deep logical conflict. So let's set the scene.
Okay, so here's the situation. Picture this. You've got a bucket that's considered ritually impure. Now, inside this bucket, there's a little bit of special water of purification, water that's used for some very specific rituals. To make the bucket pure again, you dip it into a ritual bath, a mikveh, which is just a large pool of natural water. The big question is, at what point does that bucket actually become pure? And the answer we're given, well, that's what leads us right into a contradiction.
And here it is, the conflict in black and white. On one hand, the Mishnah, which is this foundational collection of Jewish oral law, gives a pretty simple rule. It says a simple majority of new water inside the bucket is enough to purify it. But that's strange, because the main expert on these things, Rabbi Yehuda, he's known for a way stricter test, the appearance test. You know, think about how just one drop of red wine can change a whole glass of water and disqualify it. So why is he all of a sudden so lenient in this one specific case? It just doesn't add up.
To solve this little mystery, two of the Talmud's greatest detectives step onto the scene. First up is Abaye. He takes a look at this contradiction and suggests, hey, maybe the problem isn't in the logic. Maybe it's about who is saying what.
Abaye's theory is just brilliant in how simple it is. He argues that Rabbi Yehuda isn't contradicting himself at all. That lenient majority rule, that's Rabbi Yehuda's own personal take on it. But the super strict appearance test, well, that's a teaching he's just faithfully passing along from his own teacher. So he holds both opinions, but one is his and the other is his teacher's. No contradiction.
Now, to get this, we need a quick definition. The strict rule comes from something called a baraita. Think of it as a teaching from the same time period as the Mishnah, but one that wasn't included in the final edited collection. Abaye is basically saying the Mishnah is telling us Rabbi Yehuda's personal view, while this baraita is just quoting him, quoting his teacher.
And here's the proof that Abaye brings to the table. This really powerful quote comes from Rabban Gamliel, who was Rabbi Yehuda's teacher. And the principle is simple. When you mix a substance with more of its own kind, it doesn't get canceled out. It just becomes a bigger pile of the same thing. This is the whole basis for that stricter rule.
So here's the bottom line for Abaye. That strict rule from Rabban Gamliel, it only kicks in when you're mixing something with its own kind, like urine and more urine. But in our case, remember, we're mixing special water of purification with regular bath water. They're two different things. And because they're different, Rabbi Yehuda's own more lenient majority rule applies. Boom! Contradiction solved. It's a really elegant solution.
But hold on, the case isn't closed just yet. There's another detective on the scene, Rava, who was Abaye's famous colleague and often his rival. He looks at the exact same problem and comes up with a completely different solution. He doesn't care who said what. Instead, he looks closer at the facts of the case itself.
Rava asks this absolute game-changing question. Everyone's just assuming the entire bucket is impure. But what if the text is describing a very, very specific scenario? What if the water of purification inside the bucket is totally pure, and it's only the outer surface of the bucket that's become impure? Just reframing it like this changes literally everything. If only the outside of the bucket is the problem, the whole legal dynamic just shifts completely. The water inside isn't the issue at all, it's the surface of the bucket. Let's see how this whole thing unfolds.
So, Rava explains that there are actually two layers of law at play here. According to the original fundamental law, all you'd need to do is get the outside of the bucket wet to purify it. Any tiny amount of water would work. But the sages, they were worried. They thought someone might be a bit stingy with that precious water inside the bucket and maybe try to dip it so carefully that they'd miss a spot on the outside. So they added a safeguard. You have to immerse the entire bucket so the bath water actually goes inside.
And this is it's a brilliant solution. For Rava, the majority rule has nothing to do with nullifying the water inside. It's all about satisfying the reason for the sage's extra rule. Once the bucket's owner has let so much bathwater in that it makes up a majority, they've clearly proven they're not being stingy. That concern is just gone. And at that moment, the sage's extra rule has done its job, and the bucket becomes pure by the original basic law. The contradiction just vanishes because the two rules were never even talking about the same thing to begin with.
So, the case is solved. But what's so incredible here is that we don't get one single right answer. Instead, we get two totally valid, logically sound solutions that just show off these completely different ways of thinking and analyzing a problem.
So let's just break down the two approaches real quick. Abai solves the puzzle through a kind of historical analysis. He's focused on who is speaking. But Rava, he solves it by digging into the facts of the case. He focuses on the situation. Both are just a masterclass in problem solving.
But Rava doesn't just stop there. He uses all this deep thinking from this one specific puzzle to build something way bigger, a universal framework for all cases of mixtures and nullification. And this is where the whole thing becomes truly timeless.
He takes a step back from the impure bucket and the special water and asks a much bigger question. What are the fundamental principles going on here? And from that, he pulls out 3 core rules that you can apply to almost any situation where one thing gets mixed into another.
And here is his system. It's so clear. If you're mixing different kinds of things, the test is taste. Can you still taste the original substance? If you're mixing the same kind of thing, the test is majority. And if there's a visible difference, like a color, then the test is appearance. 3 distinct situations, 3 clear rules. It's that simple.
So the really amazing takeaway here is that we started with this very specific, kind of obscure ritual law, and we ended up with this powerful systematic guide to logical analysis. It's really about how to categorize problems, figure out what the key variables are, is it taste, quantity, appearance, and then apply a consistent rule. That's a thought process that applies way beyond ancient law.
And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. Rava's journey from this one single contradictory case to a whole universal framework is just incredible. It kind of makes you wonder, right? In any field, whether it's law or science or even just our own day-to-day decisions, when does a solution to one tiny problem hold the key to a much larger universal truth? Thanks for tuning in.